So not very long of a break, just about 3 minutes or so. Thank you.
I didn't.
Go ahead and regroup, everyone. So if everyone can please return to their seats, we're going to get ready to get started here. Can't hear me? They have it off.
Your mic's not on.
It's not on.
Nope.
Nope.
How was he doing it?
Nope.
Must have turned them all off.
Mike's on.
Hello.
We're trying to.
Mike's not on.
Ladies and gentlemen, if we may have your attention, please. We're going to start the next segment of the program immediately.
Oh, Mr. Official.
Stephen Kendrick.
Hi, Barry, how are you?
Nice to see you, sir. Thank you for joining us this evening, sir.
Guaranteed if we don't bring up forfeiture early, it will come up. Okay. Let's go to... Okay, that's fine. It's sort of this one, but I'd kind of come up with my own too, so I'll see what the... That's fine.
Right now, we're just waiting for our host. We can bring it back and I'll introduce the program. Thank you for sticking with us if you're watching, listening, or in the audience this evening. We will now go on to the second part of our debate this evening, and that is between the county prosecutor candidates. On your left up here, we have Mr. Tim Bookwalter, and on our right, we have Mr. Robert Perry. We will have a very similar format to the last time around, where we will have opening statements for 2 minutes each, and then we will also have questions from your panel up here. They will be allowed to respond for 3 minutes each, and then there will be a 1-minute rebuttal if the candidates choose to take it. We will go through that for approximately 40 minutes, and then we will have 2-minute closing statements in the same order that we start now. We will now be starting with opening comments from Mr. Bookwalter.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and DePaul University for hosting us. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm 55 years old. I've been married for 32 years to my wife, Mary Jo. We have 3 kids. In March, we're going to have our first grandchild by my oldest. My daughter's a first-year law student following in Dad's footsteps, and my baby is a freshman in college on an airplane home right now. Flight delayed, or he'd be here. I've been the county attorney prior to being prosecutor for 12 years. I've represented county government, both the commissioners and the county council. January 1st of 2005, I became the prosecutor. And I was really faced with sort of 3 epidemics. Number 1 was the meth epidemic. Meth cases doubled every year in Putnam County from 2003 to 2005. 2005, they topped out at 78 meth cases, doubling every year. We sat down community-wide with law enforcement, with the judges, with substance abuse counselors, and we came up with a plan. You know it's called the Stop Meth Plan. In 2009, our cases were 6. We dropped 91% by working together. My second big problem was deadbeat parents. We had a huge number of people that just would not pay their child support, and I was told, can't do anything to make them pay. Can't do anything to make them pay. Since January 1st of 2005, I've criminally charged 284 parents for not paying their support, arrested them and got bonds. These people that couldn't pay have paid $1.3 million in back support. It can be solved. My third problem was child molesters. If you follow our papers, we have a lot of child molesting in this county, and not much was happening. We had people getting out of jail with no time for child molesting. We toughened up, we cracked down, we've tried a number of cases, we haven't made plea agreements on these cases, and we found out that our sentences now are 400% higher than they were 6 years ago. And what you want in a prosecutor is somebody that looks at problems and finds solutions.
Thank you very much. Next opening statement, Mr. Perry.
I'm Bob Perry. I'm an independent candidate for Putnam County Prosecutor. I live in Greencastle with my wife Teddy, and I have been married for 2 months today. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and WGRE and DePaul for hosting this event. As I indicated, I am an independent candidate for Putnam County Prosecutor. I've practiced law in Greencastle since 1994. I practiced on the square with Karen Temple. I've been a lawyer for 36 years. For 8 years, I was a deputy prosecutor when Matt Headley was the prosecutor. During those 8 years, I tried every kind of case from truancy to murder. Before that, some years ago, I was an assistant United States attorney, a federal prosecutor in Indianapolis. And before that, I was a law professor at John Marshall Law School in Indianapolis. I was moved to be an independent candidate for Putnam County Prosecutor because I wanted to raise 3 issues in this campaign. The first is there ought not to be special deals for special people, that all criminal cases should be judged by the same standard. Second, that we ought to have a careful review of all cases before we file them. We need to be sure that the police have obtained all the evidence that is necessary, and that when we charge a case, we charge what we can prove and prove what we can charge. And the final issue, which is very much of a concern to me, is that I believe this county needs to obey state law in regard to the disposition of funds seized along I-70. The state constitution and the state statutes say that that kind of money, asset forfeiture money, is to be paid to the Common School Fund, and we're not doing that. Recently, the State Board of Accounts performed an audit of the Putnam County Prosecutor's Office and concluded that they were not in conformity with this requirement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Perry. We will now go to the question portion. All candidates will have 3 minutes to respond, of course. And if, as we go through our panelists, if they could also reintroduce themselves and what organization they're with. I, for example, my name is Stephen Kendrick, and I'm with WGRE News and the moderator for this evening. And now we go to WGRE News for the first question, and that will go to Mr. Perry.
All right, I'm Meredith McGrady, and as Stephen said, I'm from WGRE News. What is your position on plea agreements, particularly in cases like child molestation and domestic abuse?
Most criminal cases are determined by plea agreement. This is true across the country. Probably less than 10% of cases are actually tried. I don't know that you can have a blanket policy that we won't have a plea agreement in a particular kind of case. If you can negotiate a very favorable plea agreement that provides for the interest of the community and provides appropriate disposition for the offender, then there's not a problem with it. What you need to be concerned about are situations where cases are essentially given away, where charges are reduced dramatically during the plea negotiation process. That was my point earlier, that when we charge a case, we ought to charge appropriately, and we ought to charge what we can prove and prove what we can charge. If a defendant is prepared to plead guilty as charged, and the sentence agreement is appropriate, then that's fine.
Thank you very much. Mr. Brookwalter.
My test is if there's a reason to plead it down, you do it like you've got a child victim that would be catatonic on the stand. You've got a witness that dies. But if you don't, you stand on the lead charge. My opponent didn't do that. If you compare my 6 years as prosecutor versus his last 6 years as prosecutor, 79% of child molesting cases he either dismissed or pled down. The average sentence was 2 years. Okay, let me give you an example. Daniel Trueblood confessed to molesting a 10-year-old girl, and Mr. Perry let him out with no time and dropped the child molest charge. He molested again, and I had the case. He got 30 years out of me, and he's in prison. When he gets out, he's going to be on lifetime GPS. If there's not a reason to drop a charge, you don't do it just to get the easy way out. 79% of the time, you don't do it.
Thank you. And a rebuttal or follow-up from you, Mr. Perry?
Well, I was not the prosecutor. I was the deputy prosecutor. I did not handle all of the child molest cases that went through the prosecutor's office during the 8 years that I served in the prosecutor's office.
Mr. Perry, your name is on the plea agreement. It's right here. He signed the plea agreement agreeing to no time.
Thank you. We will now go on to the next question, and that will come from the League of Women Voters. Mr. Brookwalter, you will have the question first. Sure.
What are your qualifications for this position, and what distinguishes you from your opponent?
I think my qualifications are my record. You know, we both practiced law for a long time. We're both very experienced. But what I think you've got to look at is the record. And let's start with the meth, okay? It doubled every year for 3 years. Nothing was done when Mr. Perry was in the office. No plan at all. I sat down with law enforcement. What we did was, the police sitting out here went out and arrested the dealers, and we sent them to prison, and they're still in prison. That's why part of the reason it's down 91%. We found from doctors that